We are live, and we are going Ironman Chattanooga 70.3 preview. We are back to full-time racing, and we are going to bring you some segments that we're going to do throughout the year. We're going to call these the Coach's Corner because we've got everybody's favorite triathlon coach, Katie Malone, in the studio with us. How you doing, Coach Katie Malone?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me again.
Awesome to have you in. You're the smartest person in this room, and that includes our own Matthew Roland over here. We're rolling with Roland.
Yep.
Is that your segment? We'll name the segment Rolling with Roland.
Works for me.
All right. Matthew, those of you who remember last year, he did Chattanooga 70.3 last year, gave you a good preview of it. We're gonna preview this race. We're going to talk about the city of Chattanooga a little bit, and we're going to hopefully get you ready for your, probably for most of you that are listening to this and participating in short course, long course, whatever it may be coming up this season. This will probably be your first 70.3 of the season. So we're going to have that preview. So you guys, for those of you that don't know Matthew, just tell us just a little bit about yourself and what you're all about, just all the fun, interesting things about Matthew Roland.
This will be short. There's not much.
That's it. All right, let's move to Katie.
That's right. I don't know. You know, I've been coached by Katie since 2017. So, it's been going for a little while, huh? You know, what I enjoy about all of this is just the ability to be able to get outside and exercise. And, you know, when you get to race day, you know, just enjoying the atmosphere of wherever you're at, seeing new stuff all the time. So that's sort of, I guess, my story in a small nutshell is just, you know, getting out, being healthy, being active, and enjoying, you know, doing what you enjoy doing.
And you're being modest because you've made some pretty dramatic gains over these 4 years, I understand.
Katie's shaking her head and saying yes. So yes. And it's cool sometimes because you don't necessarily see it day to day, but when you look like month to month or year to year, you really see it. One of the things that I love, because we use Training Peaks, and one of the things that I do at the beginning of every year, I actually started with Katie in the end of January, beginning of February. And so when I started with her, I remember the first workout I had that you gave me was a 500-meter swim. That was my first workout. And I couldn't finish it. In fact, I remember I said on there, you know, I can't do this. I'm feeling sick, and you know, I can't finish this. I think I did like 300, and I couldn't finish the whole swim. And so I look back now and like my swim yesterday, my warm up was 1,000. So
he's bragging now. He's bragging.
You know, it's good to see. It's good to see progress year to year.
Well, and it is. You know, you talk about that month to month and the year after year, and that all starts. And that's kind of the whole genesis of this podcast. Why the name Do Hard Things Today? Well, it is. We close the podcast with, if you'll do the hard things today, tomorrow will take care of itself. And that's, I think you've seen that, 5 years now, if you started in 17.
Sure. Just
consistently doing those things day after day, and here you are, probably at a place that you never thought you would be from a fitness level.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So we look forward to hearing about what you're going to be doing this year as well when we get a little bit further into the podcast. But Coach, for those that don't know you, what's your story?
Okay, I'll try to keep it brief. My story is basically I always had a dream to go to Kona, and I realized that in order to make that dream come true, I was going to need to give up corporate America. So I quit my perfectly good job and took up triathlon full time. Was able to race as a pro for a little while, have done over 30 Ironmans now, and I'm a full-time coach and have been for 20 years now.
Nice. 30 Ironmans. That's incredible. That's incredible. She is awesome, and I would just encourage you, and we'll give you that information at the end, but she is a fantastic coach, and I think you coach. One of the unique things about you is you have all levels, right?
Yes, I coach all abilities from people who are just beginning, learning to swim, all the way through athletes who are going to Kona. And the reason why I enjoy that is because I think it makes me a better coach. Because I'm able to apply what I learned from the people who are doing really well and racing really fast to people who are coming up through the ranks, but also remembering what it's like to be a true beginner. I think it just keeps me humble. And it reminds me what it takes and the work that has to go into it. And so I think every athlete has value. I know some coaches only work with high-end athletes, and I just don't think that would be something that would help me to grow as a person.
Yeah. Well, you do a great job at it, and you have tremendously helped me. And I think one of the things about coaching, and we'll talk about this in the So You Want to Be an Ironman podcast as well, but I think the unique thing that coaching brings that some of the online programs and other things don't bring is the personal interaction, and then finding out like what everybody needs something different. Some of us like I like direct talk, and just if I need to have my butt kicked, that's what I want and that's what I need. And sometimes online and those kind of things won't do that. I know, and I'll tell the story in the next podcast, but you kind of gave that to me, and it really helped me, and I'm very thankful for it. But it really helped me, and I'm not going to tell you about it now, so you can't know right now, Matthew. But in the next podcast, you'll get to hear about that. So enough about us. Well, enough about Katie, right, Matthew? So it's we do have for all joking aside, she is someone that knows a tremendous amount about triathlon and how to better yourself. So this will be a very, very valuable podcast, not only using her expertise, but also the experience of Matthew as we get into it. So let's talk about the city of Chattanooga. So Chattanooga hosts 2 events. They host the half Ironman and they host a full Ironman. Now this year, there's kind of an added benefit. Now we know how we all like medal. We did Dopey Challenge podcast a little while ago, and you get 6 of these big clunky medals, so you're like Mr. T walking around in the Disney parks with those. Everybody loves a great medal. I love medals. I walk around with mine. I embarrass my family when I do it, but that's just an added benefit. This year there is something different, and I think this is the first time ever in Ironman history that they are doing a different medal. You've got if you do the 70.3 in May, and then you do the full in September, you get an additional medal. And I don't know if it's like the Little Debbie cake, because they're like sponsored by Little Debbie, I think.
They are.
But it is, so you get the little Swiss, in my opinion, Swiss cake rolls are the best Little Debbie thing ever made. Jed Blackwell doesn't have a microphone, but he is shaking his head yes over there. So that's an interesting twist this year, that you can get a third medal if you choose to do both of those. But we're gonna focus on the 70.3 today. So let's talk about the city of Chattanooga. What's unique about it? What's fun about it? I've heard a lot of things about. I've been through Chattanooga several times, but I have not spent the amount of time that you guys have, and specifically in that community. So what can you tell us about the city of Chattanooga and the atmosphere there?
The atmosphere is fantastic. This will be my 3rd time doing Chattanooga half, and every time it blows me away. The people there are incredibly friendly. There are you do the bike course. You obviously you go out of Chattanooga, but when you're on the run, you're running all through the city of Chattanooga, and there are multiple places where there's just the streets are just lined with people that are cheering you on and watching the event, and just rooting for you, and it really makes the run go by quick. But even before race day, when we go up there on race day or before race day, we typically, me and a buddy of mine, we typically go up on Thursday evening, and then, we'll kind of relax and just chill out, visit Ironman Village, walk around and stuff. But the people there are so accommodating, and I think they genuinely just love to see athletes come into town.
Yeah, and Coach, I've heard it described as an outdoor community. And I know with different races, sometimes you go into races and the community's they're not really, really welcoming. Maybe they don't stand off, but they're just not super welcoming. I've heard Chattanooga described as an outdoor friendly community. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I think aside from Ironman, there are so many activities to do. And I just love going there just to be surrounded by people who kind of have that mindset. There's a lot of rock climbing. There's, the river. They have all sorts of paddling events on the river. They have bike rides up Lookout Mountain, which is a huge climb there. They've got the Hincapie Gran Fondo, which is actually this coming weekend. That is there too. It is nonstop. There's stuff going on. There's a big climbing gym right downtown, and there's also the aquarium. And there's a kids museum. There's so much, you can bring your family and have fun. And that's what I like about it. It is very inclusive.
Yeah, that seems to be the MO of what most people say about Chattanooga. And so, and I also hear lodging is a pretty easy thing. You can get in and out pretty easily. I think some events it's very important to stay right at the event site. I understand that's not as important here. Is that fair to say?
So I'm of the mindset I always want to stay pretty close because I always want to be within walking distance of the transition so that I can be there to get my stuff organized, but also so that if I have any athletes, in the vicinity, it's easy for me to go down there and meet them. So I like to stay close. Yeah. But you can, the way the race course is set up, it allows you to come in on the highway and drive in kind of to the backside of transition and park somewhere there. Of course, you have to find parking, but it's a very well laid out city considering that it's old. They've done a good job with their planning.
So what makes this? There's a lot of 70.3s out there, a lot of things you can do. What makes, if somebody is out looking at 70.3s to do, and maybe even they're training this year to prepare for one next year, what makes Chattanooga unique, this race? What makes it unique? What makes it a race that's worth doing?
Well, first thing, for anyone who's in, the Southeast, it's an easy drive, which is always nice to be able to just put your bike in your car and arrive at the race site. The second thing is a downriver swim. Now, there may or may not be a lot of current, but downriver is downriver. The water also in that river is pretty clean as rivers go. You can see your hands in front of your face. You can see the other swimmers in the water with you. I think that's nice, but the downriver swim attracts a lot of people who otherwise might not be interested in that distance. The swim is a little bit longer because it's a downriver swim. So it kind of evens out if there isn't a lot of current. The bike is rolling. There's some flat and there's some rolling. It's really, really nice. It's a very enjoyable bike. It's very manageable, I think, for any level athlete. And then the run, there are a couple of hills, but it's really not a bad run. It's scenic. It's along the river. It's 2 loops. So it kind of mentally breaks it up.
Yeah, I've heard from athletes and from reading in different groups and things, I've heard people say that they chose this race for an obvious reason. They say easy swim. And we've said this before. There's no such thing as an easy Ironman or an easy swim. There is a much more it's a much more manageable swim than some of the others.
Yes, and I agree with that. And again, I also caution people because you do not know what the current is going to be the day that you show up. TVA, the dam authority, they make that call. It depends on how much rainfall there's been. So we don't know if there's going to be a big current or no current. So you still need to do your swim training.
Yeah, and I would add to that what I've heard people saying, maybe Matthew, you can speak to this. Some people go to that race thinking it's an easier swim and that's why I'm doing this. But then they talk about that it was a very good course. From the bike, the run, they really enjoyed the course. They went there because the quote unquote it was an easier swim, but they really enjoyed the course. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. I've done this. Let's see, I've done Chatty half twice, and I've done, I want to say 3 other half Ironmans, and this is probably my favorite course. probably tied for, I did one up in the Finger Lakes of New York last summer, which was really nice. But Chattanooga, I think just for the differences, like, you don't just get one thing. Like when I did Maryland, the bike's flatter than flat, and so it's all constant. You're just pedaling all the time. Chattanooga, you get a nice mix of sections of the road where it's flat, sections of the road where you've got a downhill, and then sections of the road where you're doing some climbing. And I would say none of it is extreme. So you don't have any extreme downhills, you don't have any extreme climbs, but just a good Andrews. But it's short. It's a short extreme climb. So I mean, if you get enough momentum into it, you can carry yourself up it pretty well. But it is, it's got a pretty good grade to it, but it's not long. And then Chickamauga, kind of right there at mile 40, 45, it's not very extreme as far as the grade goes, but it is a little bit longer than Andrews. But it's just a nice flowy course is what I would say. And then when you're on the bike, especially, and Katie might not like me saying this, but I love the views that you get on the bike. So it's I just didn't know if you focus, yeah, you are enjoying the journey. I just didn't know if you'd be like, you need to focus, but, certainly you stay focused on what you're doing, but the scenes that you see leaving out of Chattanooga going into upstate Georgia and stuff, and seeing the mountain views, it's beautiful. And I'll say this too about the swim, kind of adding on to what Katie was saying, you really do never know, what you're going to get. The first year I did it, the swim was extremely fast. Now I remember they cut the course because the current was so strong. Back then, you had a section where you were swimming upstream, then you turn and go back downstream, and they stopped that after they saw the pros go, and some of the pros struggling with it, I think. But I remember that year, the swim was like super fast, super fast. And then last year did it, and it was almost like you could barely feel the current. So you really never know what you're going to get. So I would say, my thought process in it personally is go into it thinking like it's just a regular swim. Don't think that you're going to have a current. Don't expect that current to help your time.
So with that said, let's jump right into the course breakdown, and let's talk about that swim, because it is when did they change? Because the one you're talking about was 2 years ago or
3 years ago. It was 3 years ago, and then COVID hit, and then last year they changed it.
Yeah, so 3 years ago you would swim, and what he's talking about is you would start and you would actually swim up. Was it 200? I don't know. You would swim. It wasn't much, but you would swim upstream. You'd make a turn, and then you'd swim downstream for the balance of the course. Last year they added, so now it's not a 1.2 mile swim, it's 1.4 mile swim.
Right.
But it's all downstream. So just give us a quick, I mean, we've talked some about it, but just a quick course break. I mean, some people may have done Augusta. Augusta is a very fast swim. You're getting, what are the differences when we talk about open water swims? You've got lakes, you've got oceans, you've got rivers, those kind of things. What are the differences? And Coach, you may be able to best speak to that as well too. Of what are the differences in these? When we talk open water swimming, what do people need to prepare for? And for those that have never swam in a river before, what does that look like?
Well, I think this river is unique because it is so wide. So you still need to practice open water sighting. They still have buoys out there. It doesn't really matter what side of the buoys you swim on most of the time, but you still need to be able to swim in a straight line. You've got the bridges that you can sight off of, but it is still important to practice open water swimming and sighting because there is lots of opportunity to get off course here.
Yeah. Well, what do you do? Most triathletes, mm-hmm. and their biggest fear is going to be, well, they're not. Most people are swimming is going to be their least favorite thing, but their biggest fear is going to be open water swimming. What do they do? How do you assure people if they've done the training mm-hmm. and they get out in the middle of the river and let's say they start panicking? What advice would you give them? What assurance would you give them that they're going to be okay? And I'm not talking about something medical happening. I'm talking about they're just They're out in the middle of the river and they realize, I'm out in the middle of a river. I'm going to drown.
Yeah, so mentally, I think the biggest thing, especially with the 70.3, is it's almost 90%, going to be wetsuit legal. Your wetsuit will float you even if you do nothing. Yeah. So like if you tried to sink yourself, you can't.
Yeah. And
I think that that's an important thing to remember for people, because I think it's easy to forget that you've got that wetsuit on that will float you. So you can just tread water or just float there for a minute on your back and collect yourself and breathe. You have to remember to do the basics, and breathing is always one of them. Looking up at the sky, remembering that the air that you need is right there. Yeah. It's a mental, you have to kind of, if you are prone to panicking, you have to have a couple of tools in your pocket when you go, or things you're going to say to yourself that will remind you that you are safe and you are okay. There are also the kayakers out there. You can always hang on a kayak, raise your hand, hang on the kayak for a minute, and get your act together before you continue.
Yeah, and the breathing is so important. And what happens, I have the opportunity to speak. A lot of stuff I do, I end up speaking in front of crowds, and that is a huge just. It's the number one fear most people have of speaking in front of in public. And so there are people, I'll talk to people and I was like, man, I'm speaking this thing and I'm so scared. What do I do? I'm nervous. I'm going to, like, the thing that hurt, you get nervous and you start breathing really fast, and you start shallow breathing. And I remember last year at our graduation, at the Dorman graduation, one of the young ladies was going to speak, and she was physically ill, and I told her, I said, breathe through your stomach. Now you can't breathe through your stomach, but if you try to breathe through your stomach, you will take a huge breath, and it calms everything down. I think, like you just said, these things steamroll on us. You get a little bit nervous, you start taking short breaths, then you're not getting as much oxygen in, and it makes you more panicky, and this thing you just go down this bad path.
So I think that those are the first things that I would always recommend to anyone is, your wetsuit's going to float you. Make sure you can breathe, look up at the sky. Just, remember that everything you need is right there in front of you. You say a little prayer if you're religious sort. And then the other thing is come back to some basic, do catch-up drill. Do 3 strokes of catch-up drill. Do 3 strokes of swimming. Trick your brain into focusing on something specific rather than letting your mind run wild.
Yeah, some of that stuff has really helped me, because even though I am the world's greatest swimmer.
Yes, of course.
I had to start saying that, because I used to, all my responses back to her would be, I'm just a terrible swimmer. And
I love to swim.
Yeah, I love to swim now, and I'm the world's greatest swimmer. If you need to know who that is, you're looking at him. So take that for what it's worth. But I have found that as I am in the water and I start getting frustrated, things start going really south on me, and everything starts dying. And there are some things that I can do in the water to kind of just realign, get things back on course, slow down. And ironically, on things like, if you're like me in what I would call I'm still in the beginner swimmer. That's where I would, maybe I'm intermediate. I don't know. Whatever you want to call what I do. I think slowing down has really helped me to get faster.
Yes.
And as I try to slow down, and for those of you that are swimming, and I'm probably not the person to give swim tips, but I will say this, that it is not like, if you want to get faster on the bike, if you want to get faster on the run, you got to run faster. You've got to do, and if you want to, yesterday I was doing some track work, and it was like, okay, run fast during this 400. And if I'm in the pool, I'm going to swim a really fast 50. It's like I go slower, because I'm just not to that point yet of an advanced swimmer where I can do that. But when I slow down everything and relax, I get faster. And so I'd encourage you on that too, that if you're out there and you're in that beginner intermediate thing, to relax as well when you're doing that. I had that conversation with I've got a young runner that's a pretty good runner. She's a whole lot better runner than I am. And for her races, I found with her of telling her, hey, relax out there. Relax. Don't put and it seems to help. We put a lot of pressure on ourselves. So Matthew, as an athlete, tell us about how crowded is a swim? What kind of contact are you having with others? What's the start like? We don't do the mass starts anymore. So what are we looking at there?
For Chattanooga, I really like, and a lot of the 70.3s I think are going to this kind of format, to where typically they start either 2 to 3 athletes every 10 to 15 seconds. Yeah. Chattanooga is, at least last year, you kind of file into lines and you self-seed yourself, on what your expected swim finish is. And then you go down a dock and you jump off of a dock into the water. Yeah. Now, as Katie was saying, it is, the river's a large river, as far as, the width of it. And so there's pretty good room up there. And I would say that, as far as swims go, it's certainly not, I would not personally call it the most crowded swim that I've ever done, by any stretch of the imagination. I try to focus on, and kind of going back to that point you're talking about a minute ago, one of the things that I focus on is, there's no rules in Ironman about drafting in the swim. Yeah. So I try to find someone within the first couple 100 yards that's swimming about the same pace as me, and I get on their feet. And I focus on arm extension, keeping my arm extended out, and then trying to touch their feet with every stroke, and just staying right behind them until it's time for me to pass them if I feel like they're going too slow or whatever. But that's one of the things I focus on. For me, I don't think in this race that I've ever been swam over. That's never been, and Katie's shaking her head no too. So for this particular race, that's never been an issue. I've never been, awkwardly hit or kicked or anything in this particular swim. I have in Augusta. When I went up to New York last year for Muscleman, I was swam over in that race. And so it does happen, but I haven't experienced that, knock on wood, at Chattanooga. I just think that the way that they start you and the way that you self-seed, that it's really not an issue.
Yeah. So we get to the end of the swim. Let's move into transition. Coming out of the river, what?
Coming out of the river.
Yes.
I definitely want to mention that there are some metal stairs that go down into the water, and there are people standing on the metal stairs that will help you out. And I'm a real independent person, but getting out on those stairs, you want to take somebody's hand because they are very slippery and they're very steep. So definitely reach out and get the help when you're getting out of the water.
Is that the only exit point?
That is the only exit point because there's a wall. There's a big seawall. Yeah. And so they put these steps over the seawall just for this race.
Okay.
So it's the only way to get out, and it's extreme. So you need that extra hand.
Yeah. Okay. So you make it up the stairs with help. Then what happens?
They are going to have strippers this year. And for those of you who don't know, those are the people who help you get your wetsuit off. Yeah. So you want to pull your wetsuit down to your waist, and then you drop down on your butt. You give them your feet, and they pull your wetsuit off, and they throw it at you. You jump back up, and you run into transition with it.
And this would be the point of when you start with there's really no shame in triathlon. Let them strip it off of you and just lay down like an animal and just let them strip it off of you and take off.
It's the most popular volunteer job.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, when you said Jed, who is not a triathlete, and he's like, when you get out of the water, there are strippers there. You're just thinking, well, wait a minute, what kind of event is this? But so they take those off, and then you head to transition. How far is transition from?
It's a good little run. Mm-hmm. So you run up kind of through a park.
Let me stop you there.
Yes.
So on that run, how do you recommend people, and again, this is from the swim point to where you get to transition to pick up your bike, this is not part of the run course. But when you get from there to do you recommend people if they're coming out of the water and their heart rate's high, do they need to run or do they need to take this to get themselves back under control? And what's the deal there?
It depends on the athlete's level, but typically I would say you want to move swiftly through transition. You don't, the faster you can move, the better. I always say when you get out of the water, especially here at Chattanooga with having the strippers there, leave your swim cap and goggles on your head. Work on getting your wetsuit off. Let the strippers get your wetsuit off and then take your goggles and your swim cap off, because that way you don't have them in your hands when you're trying to get your wetsuit off.
Yeah.
I just don't like to lose my nice goggles. Then you run through like a big long chute, or at least that's what you have done in the past. They change things from year to year depending on what they think's most efficient. You pick up your bag with all your swim to bike gear in it, and you run into transition with it where you can get dressed. Now, sometimes they might let you set your stuff up at your bike. It just depends. Every year it's different. The athlete guide is not out yet, or at least I have not seen it for this Chattanooga half. So that's the way it was last year when we did it.
So in transition, let's specifically talk to beginners that may be doing their first half. What are things that they specifically need to make sure that they do not forget to do, or that they do or don't do in that first transition area?
Okay. In the first transition area, I think for a beginner as well as anyone who's experienced, things that are easy to forget are to make sure to put your salty britches. And for those of you who don't know what salty britches is, it is basically a chamois butter skin lubricant that you want to put inside of your shorts. And yeah, that doesn't sound real nice, but it will save you on the bike, especially when your shorts are all wet. So you want to get that on in transition. And you also want to get sunscreen on, because the chances of it being really hot for the first time this season are really good. And if you get sunburned when you're on the bike, it is going to make your day a whole lot worse. So the goal is to make sure you get your lubricant in your shorts and your sunscreen on your shoulders and your arms and your back.
So how do you recommend people remember that? Because we're saying it on the podcast and everything sounds great, but we've all been there. You hit transition, you start thinking, okay, I got to get out there, and you start sometimes. How do you remember? Should you write these things down and put them on your bike? How do you remember these things?
The way I put things in my bag so that I don't forget them, I will put my lubricant in one shoe and my sunscreen in the other shoe, because my shoes will be on my feet before I leave transition. And
there you go.
I can't put my feet on, or my feet in my shoes if I've got stuff in my shoes. And so that's anything that has to go with me or has to be done is going to go in my shoe. Now, the other thing about that, though, is in this race, the transition area is huge. So what I will do, depending on where my bike is, say like last year I was right smack in the middle, I will take my shoes with me all the way to where the bike, where you can get on your bike, the bike mount line is, almost all the way out of transition, and then I'll put my shoes on. Yeah. Because I don't want to run that far in my bike shoes, because anyone who's tried to run in their bike shoes knows it's impossible.
Yeah. So, not to be crass here, but some people are thinking, okay, you talk about, how am I going to get lube in my shorts? So this again goes where there's no shame in triathlon. I mean, nobody's trying to be out of line, but explain to them how that works. So I know how it works, but I want you to say it.
Thank you, Kevin, for that opportunity. Okay, so what I do with my lube, so that I do not end up with lube all over my hand and not all over my chamois or my nether region, I put it in a plastic bag. And then I put my hand inside the plastic bag, turn the plastic bag inside out, wipe it all over wherever it needs to go, turn it back right side out and stuff it in my pocket, and I'm good to go. And I have a little extra with me on the course.
And so you don't put it on your hands?
I don't put it on my hand.
Really? Well, I just learned something.
Because if you put it on your hand,
then it's all on your hands.
Salty Britches is wonderful because it doesn't come off.
Yeah.
Pretty much nothing gets Salty Britches off. Yeah. So if you have it all over your hands, it's a little slippery on those handlebars. So I always use the plastic bag trick for racing, and even on long rides, I keep it in a plastic bag like that so that I can just get it on without getting it on my hands.
And I would say if you get out on the bike course, and this actually happened to me on my longer bike because I was using some new shorts, which were awesome, but they were rubbing in a place that I would say that it is well worth the pull over and stop for 30 seconds to get that lube on the right place, so you're not in a bad spot later. So the Salty Britches is awesome. That's what I used to, but I had never done that. That's a
little trick.
That's a good little trick. So we get out of transition. I have heard that the first few little miles there in Chattanooga are pretty rough, and you can lose your bottles. And what's the story there?
So I just rode it on Saturday, and there are a lot of gaps. There are gaps in the concrete slabs. If you get your wheel in one of those gaps, especially your race wheels, you're going to go down. So you just want to pay attention to the road. Don't be looking around too much, because those gaps like to eat race wheels.
Yeah.
So you just have to be very careful there. There are some railroad tracks. Some of them have been fixed. Some of them have not. And so our sag wagon actually was sitting at the railroad tracks just waiting to see if anybody lost bottles or anybody went down. Thankfully, we all survived the railroad tracks just fine, but the road is rough on the way out. And those railroad tracks, you just have to be super careful and go slow.
Yeah. So coming out of transition, I guess before you, how big of a period is it? How many miles until you get out of that danger zone, so to speak, roughly?
The worst part where the gaps are in the concrete slabs, that is probably lasts for maybe 1.5 miles to 2 miles. Yeah. Then you're just kind of on bumpy downtown roads. After you get out of town, on the road that kind of takes you out to the course, there was a gap that they had cut, to lay cable or something that was probably about 1 foot wide and was dirt. Oh, wow. I am hoping that's paved by the time we get there. I hit that and I lost my bottles. And at that point, we had the discussion, well, do you go back for your bottles in a race or not? And that is something for me, I'm going back for my bottles. If I lose my bottles at it was maybe mile 8, I'm going back for my bottles because I don't want to take random nutrition in. My stomach will not tolerate that. It will ruin my day. So I'm going to go back for my bottles. Other people were saying, well, I have enough in my pockets that I can make it up, which is fine. You have to know what your stomach will tolerate. But I think the worst thing you can do, and I've tried it in races, is I'm like, oh, I'll be fine. And then I start drinking Gatorade instead of my regular sports drink. And that has never worked well for me. Yeah.
So I guess coming out, we didn't cover this in the first transition, but let's talk about nutrition when you're coming out of 30 minutes to an hour for the swim, probably. Yeah. Most people are going to be in that range. So you're going into the swim. What would you recommend they do right before the swim, and then coming out of the swim from a nutrition standpoint before we'll talk about the bike nutrition, but what do they need to do in those two spots, and then we'll talk about the bike?
That's a great question, because when you go to line up for the swim, you're going to be lined up for that swim for anywhere from a half an hour to an hour. So you need to bring a disposable bottle or a bottle that you don't mind getting rid of with some sports drink in it so that you're hydrating, especially if it's going to be a hot day. You want to be hydrating right up to the time you get in the water, and you want to have something to eat. Personally, I think I ate like a pack of Honey Stinger little gel. They have little gel blocks. I don't know. They taste like gummy bears. They taste really good, so I will eat them. And I think with sports nutrition, you have to really make sure that you have sports nutrition that you like the taste of so that you will eat it. Because if I have sports nutrition that I'm like, I don't really like it, I won't eat it. I just won't eat it.
So you do that, you get in, you swim down the river, and some people would think, I had to learn this when I first started swimming, of when you're sweating when you're in the water, but you're not feeling the sweat because you're in the water. You're going to spend 30 minutes to an hour with nothing coming in. You're getting out. You're heading to transition. What do you need to make sure you do? Obviously, we got the lube and things down, but what are the things you need to make sure you do before you take off because when you leave on the bike, you're going to have all your nutrition in its places on the bike for the bike course. Is there something you need to do in transition to get yourself back from the swim to the bike, or you want to take everything in on the bike?
No, you can start your nutrition as soon as you get out on the bike. Like once you get past that first 1.5 mile section, that's when you're really going to start taking it, because at that point too, your heart rate will be back to normal from running through transition. Then you're going to really start hammering the nutrition, as soon as you get out of the bad pavement part.
Because remember, especially people that are coming from a running background or just a cycling background, you swim and then you're on the bike. The bike is preparing you for the real hard part of the day, which is going to be the run. So let's get on through this bike course. So you get through the rough sections, and then you take off, and I think at that point then you end up you move down towards the
North Georgia.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So tell us about the course, and I think there are a couple of what they call pinchers, little, pretty good little hills on it that are nothing spectacular, but can slip up on you. So how do we prepare for those and be ready for them? I've heard that there's one. I actually rode the course on Ruby and saw it, but it's hard to simulate that. But I understand that there is one hill that you're kind of going down a pretty good downhill, and then you make like an 80-degree left. And
it's flat going into it. So I'll cover that. That's called Andrews, just so you know. So basically, the first 10 miles are flat and fast. So if you look down and you're riding 3, 4, 5 miles an hour faster than you usually are, that's okay. It is just fast on the way out of town. You got about 10 miles of that. Then you get into rollers. So you're going to just have little rollers. Get your speed up going down. Carry the speed up the next hill as long as you can. Make sure you shift effectively going into it and coming off the top of it so you can gain speed again coming down the next one. These are just rollers. They're fast. They're fun if you know how to ride them and if you shift effectively. Shifting effectively, I call them transitions. When you're on the bike, you're transitioning when you get to the top of the hill, and you're transitioning as you go up the bottom. So those are kind of the places where it's really important to shift effectively.
Are you trying to keep the same cadence all the way through, or when you're shifting and trying to keep those? I guess there's different strategies. I tend to be one that when I'm coming to the top of the hill, I really try to push it over the top of the hill into that first section going down to get as much speed, and then when you hit the bottom of the hill and you're coming up, do you let your pedals tell you that, or are you going off cadence, trying to stay above a certain cadence? How do you help someone navigate that?
It depends on the level of the athlete. Mm-hmm. I can't necessarily say in general everybody should be doing this. In general, everybody should be pedaling hard enough that they're gaining speed going down the hill, not riding your brakes, because that will actually make them have to work that much harder going up the hill because they won't have any momentum coming into it. So I think that is the most important thing rather than really monitoring the cadence right there. going up the hill, obviously you want to keep your cadence as high as you comfortably can. I mean, 90-ish. But a lot of times I might actually have a higher cadence, like hit 95-ish, just to keep my legs turning over because I know these hills are just short and punchy.
Yeah.
So you've got about 15 miles of that rolling, but there's some flats in there too where you can really move along. Then at mile, I think 25 or 26 is where you're on a nice flat section, enjoying life, pretty views, and that's when you have to turn left. And when you come to that section, usually there's a police officer out there with blue lights flashing. When you see him and you're going to take that left, you better just start shifting down because the hill starts immediately.
Yeah.
And you just need to be in a good gear to climb.
Explain that hill to us.
The hill is just steep. It's short. It's just steep. I think that you should not be overwhelmed when you make that turn and you see people walking. Those are people who did not know how to shift their bikes. Those are people who were not prepared for that hill to be there around that corner and might have been in the wrong gear. And you really want to think ahead and like shift before you're turning or as you're turning, because once you get on that incline, if you shift and you're pedaling like hard, your derailleur is just going to smack that chain over into your spokes. Yeah. And that will probably be the end of that. So you really want to make sure you're in a good gear and you're not going to spin up that hill. I don't care what kind of gears you have. There's no spinning. Yeah. So just nice, steady rhythm. Sit up. Do not try to be aero. I see people trying to ride aero up steeper hills, and I'm always like, there's no aerodynamics to be gained right here. So sit up, push back on your seat a little bit, keep your upper body still, and just kind of power through it. If you need to weave or snake, you can. My guess is it's going to be pretty crowded on the bike course. Unlike the swim course, I think by the time we get on that bike, there are 4,000 athletes racing this year.
Yeah.
So you're just going to have to make judgment calls.
And you know, and that's a point in the course too, that you're probably, if it's really, really crowded and you hit that and you're starting to, and you know, think long term in the race of if you feel unstable, and in worst case scenario you have to get off the bike and walk up the hill, then do that to keep yourself safe if it is a really, really crowded course, because some people just aren't going to be prepared for it. And you're going to hit it, and they're just not going to be prepared for it.
It's a short hill. I think anybody could make it up, you know, with good gearing, but I also suspect some people will not have good gearing.
Yeah.
Because triathlon bikes in general don't come with good gearing. You know, and people who just don't. Nobody's told them, oh, you probably need different gears to get up that hill. They're not going to have it. So it is just a rough little segment, but it's very short. So mentally, it doesn't mean a lot. So don't put a lot of pressure on yourself if it doesn't go well. You know, just get up it, get over it. As soon as you reach the top, you have like 2 miles of just nice downhill. Yeah. Fast, fun. And then the rest of the course is just fun.
And that's, so the rest of the course, you're coming back in, and it's the same kind of thing. Just a little, some rollers, flat, fast. Generally, it's going to be a very fast bike course.
All the way through Chickamauga. Mm-hmm. Not sure I'm saying that right, but you'll know it when you hit it. It's really the only little town that you come through. Mm-hmm. When you come out the other side of it, there is going to be just kind of a longer, gradual climb. It is really gradual. It's uphill, but you'll hardly even know it. Your legs might know it. The top gets a little bit steeper, and then you come down a really long hill.
Yeah. So nutrition-wise, and you mentioned it before, they're going to have some Gatorade Endurance.
I'm assuming that's what the current sponsor is.
Yeah. So we talk about this in the when we talk about training for the marathons and that kind of thing. whatever you've been training with, how important is it for you? And I know how important it is to you, but I want you to speak to our listeners. You can just take what's on the course, or you can take what you've been training with. The things that you'll find on a lot of these courses are not the very best things for performance. They are the sponsors of the race. So, how do you, let's say you've got 3 cages on your bike, maybe 4. How do you prepare for, when you're going into a 56-mile race, how do you prepare for your nutrition on the course?
Great question. So going into this race, obviously I don't know what the weather is going to be yet, and that's going to kind of dictate what your nutrition is exactly. But we're just going to say it's going to be a hot day. So if I'm preparing going into a hot day, I'm going to put 3 bottles of my sports drink. And I have a sports drink that has higher calories in it. So I'm carrying 250 calories in each of my bottles. So I'm going to carry 3 of those. And then I will drink one, I will throw it away, and I will take supplemental water from one of the aid stations so that then I'm drinking that as well. So ideally, let's just say I'm on the bike for 3 hours. I'm going to take in 4 bottles of fluids because dehydration will just destroy your performance. And most athletes are chronically dehydrated. They're not getting in enough hydration or calories. Either one will just destroy your race.
And let's talk about, this is an early season race, and it's probably going to be hot. You hear about the down river swim, and you hear about hot. Those are the 2 things that characterize this race when you talk to people. This is going to be an early season race. A lot of people are going to be training in mild temperatures coming into this. Let's remind people that water is not, that's not just the answer. That electrolytes and how important they are to what we're doing, and especially as we start getting into these hotter temperatures. And so that's something that I think people follow, especially beginners. They just drink a lot of water thinking this is going to hydrate me. But how important are electrolytes especially in a hot race?
Well, electrolytes are important the day before as well, because I've had athletes drink a ton of water trying to overhydrate. And what that does is it actually flushes the electrolytes out of your system. Yeah. So it's super important in the days leading up to a race like this to kind of top off your electrolytes and be hydrated with an electrolyte drink. And that does not mean you have to drink, 10 bottles of Gatorade. I'm just like, throw some noon tablets in your water bottles that you're drinking in the days ahead of time, just so that you're not drinking pure water. But pure water also is good to have, like some of it, so that if you are out on the course and you've taken in your calories and you're starting to feel bloated, you can still be drinking, but you're not necessarily having to take in more sports drink, because it's kind of like having a Dixie cup with a little hole in the bottom. If your nutrition is overflowing out of the top of it, you can't put more in.
Yeah, and I think it's important what's the time to figure this out? It's not on the course. It is in training. And you'll figure that out, and your body will start to tell you, like myself, I have to take in a tremendous amount of electrolytes.
Size matters.
Yeah, I'm a very big guy, and I'm a very salty sweater. And that is, I can't, if I just drink water, even during my regular days, if I'm not in like big training, just normal training times, even during my days, I've developed a good habit of drinking a lot of water. I've always got a water bottle, and I'm always drinking it. But I'll find myself at times if I start to kind of feel sluggish and just a little bit, I don't know what. But I think, again, it goes to what are you doing during training? And if you start trying different things out on the course, you're in trouble. That's where you get in trouble. So we come to the end. We're coming to the end of the bike. Let's talk about the second transition. So we're bringing our bike in, and then we are moving towards our the run course.
So again, huge transition area. When you get off your bike, I would not necessarily recommend trying to leave your bike shoes on your bike as you dismount unless you are just an expert at doing that, which I would say 99.9% of the people are not. I've watched and they're not. So just get off with your bike shoes on. And then if you have a really long run, take your bike shoes off, carry your bike shoes in one hand. Manage your bike with your right hand and carry the shoes in your left hand and run with your bike. You want to hold your bike by the stem so that you actually have control of it as you run through a sea of bikes and a sea of people.
So there's 4,000 athletes on this course. Mm-hmm. What would you say, to put some people at ease, what percentage of those people would you say are going to be new triathletes, inexperienced triathletes?
Inexperienced triathletes, I would say 60%.
Okay.
Or 40%. Probably 40% are going to be like new or inexperienced.
Okay. That should make you feel better, listeners. Don't try to be a hero out on the course to try to make yourself look better, because that's usually when we end up making a mistake that's going to cost us the entire race.
You need to think slowly and move quickly, but slow your mind down. And remember that this race is all about you. It's not about anyone else. And you don't need to be focused on anyone else during the race. You don't need to worry about what other people are doing on the bike. That's their problem. You focus on you, your nutrition, your heart rate, your effort, and where you are in your mental space. You just really don't have room to be thinking about anything other than what you need to be doing.
All right. So we hit transition. We've mounted our bike. We're ready to get our stuff. What do you need to do inside of transition and let's assume it's going to be a hot day. What do you need to do?
So we've dismounted our bike. We're off the bike.
Off the bike.
Off the bike. Put the bike away. Okay. So you're getting your run stuff quickly. Do not spend a lot of time in transition. If they do have bathrooms in transition, there are a lot of them usually. So, if you need to go to the bathroom on your way out, it's a great time to do it. Just go ahead. Go. All you need are your shoes, your hat, your race belt. That's all you need. And any nutrition or that you're planning to take with you. Lube you might need, but probably at this point you're going to be good.
Okay.
But you need to get in transition and get out of transition. T2 is where I see people waste more time, because if they're dehydrated, let's face it, your brain runs on water.
Yep.
If you're dehydrated, you are stupid.
Yep.
And you stand there and you're looking at your stuff. You don't know what to do. So it's really important to just get yourself in transition and get out quickly. Otherwise, you can waste time there.
All right, so we hit the run course, and we're going to combine two topics here.
Okay.
Because it's generally where it happens. Running this course and the heat. So we're going to assume this is going to be a hot day.
Yep.
So when we hit the run course, let's talk about the course. Let's talk about the actual 13.1 miles. But also, let's talk about how to deal with this heat if it is a hot day.
Okay. I like it. So here's what we're going to do. No matter what level you are going to have to respect the heat, or else it will knock you down. So that might mean even if you had planned on running the whole thing, if you start to feel that heat overtaking you, you have to, one, really work on getting cool. And the best place to cool yourself are the bottom of your feet, your hands, and your forehead, not necessarily your chest. Now, pouring water over your head usually helps, like cold water over the head. But if they have rags and ice and things, hold it in your hands. Hold it in your hands. That is the
interesting tip.
Yeah, it's not necessarily what you want to do, but that is where you're going to get the benefit of the cooling. Now, sometimes I'll put a white towel over my shoulders just to keep the sun off of me. If they offer to slather you in sunscreen again before you head out, go for it. Because remember, sunburn is going to heat your body up. And in the heat, the thing you want to do is keep your core body temperature normal, or as normal as possible. So ice in the hands if you can get it. cold water. If they have drinks sitting in cold water at the aid stations, dip your hands in that cold water. Yeah. Dip your hands in the cold water.
Yeah, I would just add too, on this course, there's a lot of open sunshine. Look for the shade. So when you're running up to a point and you see shade, and there's places like you'll see runners that will continue to run in that sunshine. So I will look for the shade, and if I see shade, 100 feet in front of me, I'm going to run to that shade, and I'm going to run in the shade as long as possible.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. You got to take every advantage you can get out there, and especially so it is generally it's going to be you're out in the wide open sun.
And there are spots with shade, and those I would say definitely try to run when you're in the shade. If you're having a run walk kind of day, which when it gets really hot, like I expect it to be, it is about running and walking just constantly. Yeah. You might not be on the perfect 4-1 run walk. You might run 2 minutes and you might walk 15 seconds. You might run 3 minutes and walk 45 seconds. That doesn't matter. What matters really is just to keep moving forward the best you can, running with the best form you can as long as you can.
Yeah. So is there anything special about this course? Now, we talked about the heat, outside of the heat and the other, we talk about the course, the bike course being hilly. I mean, not hilly. You got some rollers and then flat, fast generally. Is there anything about this course that we need to be aware of outside of the heat?
You're going to run over 2 bridges. You're going to run over a bridge with car traffic, and then you're going to go under it and run back across a pedestrian bridge. Yeah. And so those bridges, most of the time, those are right out in the sun, but you might get a little breeze. So that would be nice. But the one bridge is concrete and the other bridge is wood, and the pedestrian bridge has a little uphill. So that is a kicker. And mentally, if you're going to walk on the uphills and then run on the downhills. Use the downhills as free speed. So any place where there's a slight descent, run. Open up your stride, free speed.
And those things will kill you. You don't think about like a bridge. We're running the same thing down in Orlando at the Disney Marathon. It's completely flat except for when you're running up the little ramps to get onto and those things they just sneak up on you. Mm-hmm. And they can you can try to, I'm going to hammer it up the bridge, but then you get up there and it slows you down for 3 minutes after that because you're struggling. So generally speaking, is this let's talk about the course in general. Would you call this if we've got a scale of easier, fair, harder, on the scale of, and you've done 30 full Ironmans, so you've I don't know how many halves you've done, but probably a lot. Probably more than you and I combined, I would guess. But where would you put that on a scale of easier? And again, there is no such thing as an easy half Ironman. It's 70 miles. Easier, fair, harder.
I'd say this is like easy to moderate.
Yeah.
In terms of course. I do not think a flat course is necessarily an easy course, because a flat course means you're hammering the same muscles the entire time. You are pedaling the entire time. Yeah. So flat course does not always equate to easy. And I feel like a lot of people are like, oh, it's flat, it's easy, when that's not the case, because flat also means wind. Yeah. Flat also means no chance to change it up. So I think this course is like, easy to moderate, just moderate because of some of the steeper hills on it, but it's a really nice course. It's a really fun course. If you have the fitness going into it, it's as good as it gets when it comes to racing.
Yeah. So you just participated in a camp, and, anything that our listeners should be aware of, and just musings coming out of the Chattanooga camp that you guys just put on and participated in?
Yeah, the biggest thing I think was seeing, what the concrete slabs, pavement looked like coming out of transition. I just really wanted to put my eyes on that. But otherwise, I mean, there was nothing kind of out of the ordinary in Chattanooga, other than the fact that the city has grown. There is more to do than ever. Like, areas of the city that when I first started going there for Ironman really were not that nice. You never would have gone to that area. Now the city has just expanded and grown and cleaned everything up. It's amazing.
Yeah. So, Matthew, anything you would give from your experience last year in completing this race, same course, anything you would encourage first-timers or beginners or even our intermediate?
Yeah, sure. And this is something that Katie's just passed on to me, and in her years of coaching me, is just stay in the moment. When you're swimming, concentrate on your swim stroke. When you're on the bike, concentrate on what you're doing on the bike. Concentrate on taking in your nutrition, because your bike's going to prepare you for the run. And then when you're out running, focus on, your run, focus on your cadence, your arm swing, your head position. You don't want to necessarily look all the way around and look down at your feet. Just want to make sure you've got good form. So my mentality going into this for not only for myself, but what I would tell anyone, like if this is their first time, is just stay in the moment, stay concentrated on what you're doing, and it actually makes, in my opinion, it makes the day go by and the race go by quicker.
Yeah. And don't forget to have fun.
Yeah, have fun.
Don't forget to enjoy, even though you're out doing a very hard thing.
You paid for this. Have fun.
Yeah, you did. You paid for it a couple of ways. You paid for it not only in the, and what I always try to do especially, sometimes you're not prepared, but on the things that you are prepared for and you're out on the course doing those, I always like to reflect as I'm on the course of, and this process was the real payoff, and the real, when you finish this journey, the real reward is not the medal at the end of the race. The real reward is the understanding that you did something. You did something really hard. You prepared for it. You had the discipline, and then you were able to see that through.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, rolling with Roland and Coach Katie and Malone, we appreciate you guys coming up. We look forward to having a race report coming off of this, and I know there's some pretty big goals out there that some of them are going to go unstated, but look forward to getting together. And then as we move into the summer, man, racing, really, this is the first year we're really back to everything being back to normal. So we're so happy about that. And I would just encourage all of you listening to set some goals, and maybe this is a goal that's for next year for you. But this sounds like a really good race for people to dip their toes into this step up to a half Ironman distance. And as we always say on this podcast, and it's so true with all of our training, if you'll just do the hard things today, tomorrow will take care of itself.